Well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, August 5th, 2014, and we are here at Prepper Chicks in the morning before the dawn, I think is what we're going to name this show, because it gets earlier and earlier, it seems. It is light out, so that's a plus. It's like probably 70-ish degrees, not supposed to get much warmer over the next few days. It's like perfect weather right now, so upper 70s, lower 80s, supposed to be like that for at least the next 10 days, so greatly looking forward to that. Yep, 67. A little bit of rain in the forecast, but nothing major. Just a heads up, and maybe a word of caution. There's a lot in the news right now pertaining to a plethora of events going on. Between the war that's going on between Gaza and Israel, what's going on in Syria, and now this whole Ebola thing. And if you must be living under a rock if you heard anything about it. But just a word of caution. I was not online a lot yesterday, so didn't stay up with the news, and that's probably a good thing. But every 3 seconds it looked like there was a new Ebola outbreak somewhere in the United States. And people are being a little overly hysterical. I'm going to use that term. Take a deep breath. We have confirmed cases in Atlanta. They seem to be getting better. Everybody that's sick right now seems to have caught Ebola. So try not to jump on the hysteria bandwagon. Use some common sense and don't panic. That's what we do is, we're prepped and we're ready ahead of time, so that way we don't jump on that bandwagon. Biggest concern I would have right now is if you live anywhere around the Great Lakes, around Lake Erie right now, please take some extra cash and go get yourself some water. There's a bacteria outbreak in the lake itself. The city of Toledo has been without water for a while now because you cannot boil this and make it better. And a lot of people were going into Michigan and other states to get water because there was nothing that they could do about it. So it looks like the whole lake, to some degree, is affected with this. So those of you in Cleveland, I know some hometown peeps up that way, you don't think you're affected at this point. You might not be. It might not spread. But better to be safe than sorry. So get yourself some water and just make sure you're prepared ahead of time. Like I said, we saw price gouging in Toledo. What's $14.99 for a case of water that normally would go for $4. So be prepared, not scared. I think somebody said that somewhere one time. I thought it was kind of cute. But Jane, Mom with the preps in the chat room, said it's been lifted now. I'm not sure if I would still drink it at this point, but and she's good point there. Learn a lesson. Always have water storage. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that don't heed those warnings. We saw it over the winter with the storms. I mean, it's common knowledge now that people freak out anytime there's a situation. So just get ahead of it. Get yourself some preps, even if it's a little bit. Get some water storage on hand. Because if not, like I said, if you can find it, you might be paying $14.99 for a case of water. So why are we here this morning? Met up with this dude. It's probably been about a month ago or so now. And he had a book that came out, and I got to read through it, which was awesome. So thank him for sending it to me. Pertaining to a downgrade situation, specifically in the United States. And it's a book of fiction, and I'm going to air quote that word, because, one of the things that I like out there are these post-apocalyptic type genre books, because they opened your mind up to the possibilities that are out there. They're not meant to freak you out, but I do know that a lot of people out there have come over to the dark side of prepping because of them. There's some great authors out there, and let me introduce this one. His name is D.S. Edwards, and he wrote a book called Collective Retribution. So I know it's very early where you are, and the sun's probably not up yet this morning, D.S., but welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, no sun yet. I was able to go outside and walk around and get a little air though this morning, and was able to listen to the elk talking in the field. So that's always fun to do before daylight.
Yeah, you're out there in the middle of kind of nowhere, aren't you?
Yeah, we live in a pretty good spot.
That's awesome. So you wrote this book called Collective Retribution, which talks about a downgrade situation here in the U.S. And what possessed you to write this to begin with?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. Not a funny story, but it's a tragic story that possessed me to write the book. But it's amazing how much difference the book is making, and how many people contact me and say, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about prepping or being prepared." I guess I always thought you guys were nutcases until I read the book, and then I thought, wow, maybe I should, at least put something away and do something about it. Basically, when I met my wife, her baby sister was 2 years old, and I met her and fell in love with her baby sister. Well, 9 years ago, her baby sister was murdered by an illegal alien who had been deported 4 different times. And it's kind of a long story, but it was a pretty brutal murder, no mercy. And like I said, the man had been deported 4 times, and on that 4th deportation, he walked back across that wide open southern border. And I finished the manuscript 18 months ago, before we had the crisis on the border. Now it's always been a little wide open and a little loose, but what we've got happening now is ridiculous. But anyway, he walked back across that border and killed my sister-in-law. So I thought, you know what, I want to make a difference. I want to do something. What can I do? Well, maybe I can make a difference with the written word. So I wrote this book, Collective Retribution, and it deals directly with the threat that can come across that southern border. Because it's not about the poor, oppressed families. It's not about even the MS-13 gang members that are coming across the border. It's not even about an increased voting bloc for one party or another. Really, at the end of the day, what it's about is the danger that can come across and destroy our entire republic. So it's really something that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm very, very frustrated about, very, very frustrated with our current presidential administration, regarding the whole issue. So that's why I wrote the book.
Well, our condolences to your sister and your family, or your sister, your wife and your family, for what happened with the tragedy. But a lot of people don't understand, and I've seen, both sides of the argument, that these are, the kids, I'm air quoting there, that are coming across the border, need help. And I understand that. If there are small children coming across that are being sent by their parents, then yeah, we need to take care of them and turn around and look and see what's going on in their country and get them sent back to their parents. They need to have a family unit instead of being shipped all over the United States. And I saw this past week where we were shipping these people to Alaska. So in your opinion, Diaz, do you think that there's an alternative method, a reason why we're allowing these people across the border, and why would we be shipping them all across the United States, not just keeping them in the general vicinity where they're coming from, but like I said, we've seen them go to Indiana now, Atlanta, Boston, now Alaska.
Yeah, there could be lots of reasons, and if you're a conspiracy theorist, your reason, one reason that comes to mind would be maybe possibly, spread out as many as you can, so when they are of voting age, and keep in mind, they're not all kids that are being are being housed. A lot of these people are already of voting age, and what better way to ensure that you control and you retain your power than to spread out voters all over the United States, all over our country. And we know that, one particular party fights against voter ID. So, they would like to have these people voted, and there's no pretending. That's exactly what they would like. So they're several reasons.
Yeah, I mean, in Colorado, they're already giving them driver's license.
Yeah, they're starting to do that in Oregon, too. There's a thing on the ballot coming up. They want to give them driver's licenses. And, it's, I don't know. I tremble when I see what's happened to my country.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. It's very concerning. But, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but you step up and you say something, and all of a sudden you were the evil enemy and you're shot down.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, it happens to those who speak out, and it's not it's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, I've been self-employed since I was 18, and never had any phone calls, never had any audits from the IRS, nothing. And 6 weeks from the day that I published this novel, I got a letter from the IRS, and they audited me, and they went through everything for 5 years with a fine-tooth comb. So, I wear it as a badge of honor. It's like, I got some things right. I touched a nerve. I irritated somebody, and I drew an audit. So I feel like, you know what? I did a good job on the book then. That's the way I look at it.
Well, speaking of the book, how much are you willing to let the audience out there listening now know about what's going on in it?
Well, it deals with more than just the border and more than just the down-grid situation. I mean, you've read the book, and with what's happening right now with the Ebola and, on the border and everything, every day I turn the news on and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is right out of my book. And it's really kind of scary because, like I said, I wrote it manuscript 18 months ago, and it was just released in March. So all this stuff I wrote before it started happening, like I said, the border and the Ebola problem. And, there's a small section in there where, some jihadists actually infect themselves and actually travel around and, spread bodily fluids everywhere they can go. And you can't tell me that couldn't possibly happen. So I see it every day. There's stuff that's, making me nervous. Just the other day I saw that, I will say there's a German general in the book who actually is in charge of the entire American military, or, well, the collective military in the book. I don't want to give too much away, but there is a German general who's brought in by the, smarmy president to keep the peace, to control the population. And I just read online the other day that there's that German general that he's put in charge of the entire German, U.S. armed forces in Germany. I'm like, oh my gosh!
I did. I saw that. It's funny how these books are I don't know if it's scary or a good thing or what, but I mean, they're coming full circle.
And I don't know what your belief is, but I'm kind of a guy who believes in, prophetic things, and I kind of believe that, God speaks to all of us, and, some of us listen, some of us don't. And when I actually wrote the book, I didn't have a storyline in mind. I wasn't a prepper. I sat down on an airplane to write a political thriller. That was my goal. I'd always wanted to write a book, so I sat down and I opened my laptop coming home from a trip with my wife, and I opened up my laptop and I wrote a paragraph. I was like, all right, where do I go with this? And a movie actually started playing out in my mind. So I didn't sketch characters. I didn't do anything. I just wrote the movie that I was seeing, and, so many months later was the rough draft of the book. So that's, I think a lot of this stuff is there to wake people up. It's there to prepare people. And I tell people, pray that this doesn't happen, but be prepared like it's inevitable. You've got to be prepared because it's coming. There's some nasty stuff that's going to come.
Yeah. I've been known to dip my toe into Xtology a little bit. So what do you think, based upon where we're at right now and what's going on in the world? What do you think the possibilities are for what's coming up in the short future?
Well, you start talking eschatology and people's eyes glaze over, and everybody's got a different opinion. I kind of think that I'm not I'm a believer, but I'm not necessarily a pre-tribulation rapture guy. I think we're going to have to go through some pretty nasty stuff. I don't know, how much of it we're going to have to go through, but there's some stuff coming. I mean, you can't ignore what's happening in the world. You just can't ignore it. And I didn't write the book. It's not a religious book. It's not a, save or perish in the fires of hell. It's not that type of book. It's a fictional novel, but it's clean. There's no language. There's no sexual scenes. I mean, it's not necessary to put it in the book, but I'm telling you, people need to really start waking up, and they are. I run into people all over that are actually starting to wake up. So, there is hope.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And your book is well written, and the characters are very likable, and I think that's the important part of the book. A lot of times people don't remember the plot line and what happened, but they associate themselves with the characters in the book, and that's what draws them in, and you did a very good job there.
Oh, well, thanks. That's really what you want as a writer, and author Annie will tell you about that when everybody starts reviewing Alpha Farm. That's really what you want. You want people to like it. You want to make money, but you don't care. You want people to like your work.
Yeah. I'm trying to develop a thick skin on that one because we'll see what happens. But hopefully in the next couple weeks it'll hit. But this is what happens when you allow me some access to technology, and I managed to screw a few things up. So we're being reformatted right now and all that. So we should be up and going here pretty soon. But
it's all good. Not everybody's going to like it. I mean, that's just the way it is. I had a guy. You're going to love this. You're absolutely going to love this. I'm sitting at a book signing this weekend, and I have a guy come up to my table, and he picks up my book, and he reads the front cover. And Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Maricopa, Arizona, he actually endorsed my book. I sent him a copy of the manuscript, and he liked it so much. He sent me a nice letter, and he's like, I would love to endorse your book. So I put it on the front cover. So to make a long story short, this guy comes up. He picks up the book. He reads the front cover, and he slams it down on the table, and he looks me in the eye, and he says, how could you? Sheriff Joe, what he's done to those poor immigrant families is just criminal.
What?
And I said, I know. I said, immigrant families, what are you talking about? The fact that he deports and he profiles, and it's just people trying to make a better life. And I said, well, don't you worry about the dangers coming across that border? I mean, the disease, the drugs, the violence, the possible terrorism. And he looks at me and he says, if the Indians would have had borders, you wouldn't be here right now, sir. And I just looked at him for a second, and I thought, wow. Well, then a little smile started forming in the corners of my mouth, and I looked at him and I said, you know what? You, sir, make an excellent point. And he looked at me like I know, I could see the wheels turn. I know what he was thinking. He's thinking, well, how could someone as bigoted and racist and hateful as you agree with someone as enlightened and intelligent as me? And I said, you know what, sir? You make an excellent point about the Indians. Look what happened to the Indians. And he got angry and turned and walked off and never said another word. It's like, that's what happens when you have open borders. You lose your country.
Yeah. I mean, even over in the European Union, everybody thinks, oh, it's open borders. But no, you still have to go through checkpoints and everything.
Yeah.
So it's, and it's not so much that, we understand there's humans on the other side of this too. But there's only so much of our taxes that are going to go around. And I think a lot of people are very upset with the fact that, these taxes that we pay aren't being used for our own good. They're being farmed out in multiple resources against our better judgment and used for things that we necessarily normally would not use them for. And we have no say in it. And I think that's what's really pissing a lot of people off.
Yeah, it's just there's not enough to go around. There's really not. I mean, we're, $17-18 trillion in debt. We're going to be $20 trillion in debt as a nation by the time Barry Soetoro or whatever his name is leaves the White House. We're headed down a road that you can't. I mean, there's two different main parties in America. We all know there's the Democrats and the Republicans, and I see two issues with each party, one main issue with each party, one main problem. And the Republicans, it's a messaging problem, and the Democrats, it's a math problem. You cannot come up against the laws of math, and you can't do what they've done to the United States dollar and expect it to survive. I mean, that bubble is approaching .com levels right now, and the dollar's right at the top of it, and I don't think it's very much longer before that dollar collapses. I mean, mathematically, you can't bring the dollar back from where they've taken it. So yeah. I don't know how long we've got. I really don't.
Well, when we see, and again, I understand there's humans on the other side of this equation, but when you see foreign children coming over here, young adults coming over here getting a free education, whereas our kid, and I'm using that term loosely, the educational part, because it's more like indoctrination, but our own children don't have that benefit, my daughter looked at going to a college this past year that was going to cost $67,000 a year. And there were kids in that school that got a free ride that were not from the United States. And it pisses you off, quite honestly. And, our roads need repaired. We have veterans that are living in homeless shelters because we won't do anything about it. But we can bring illegal people across the border and put them up into swanky hotel rooms and all kinds of things, open military bases up. Open a military base to house these illegals, but can't take care of our own veterans, I think there's a problem there.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, the fact that we have a Marine, Sergeant Bergdahl, stuck in a Mexican jail while their people are walking across our border it's just unconscionable. It makes you angry. I don't know about you, but it makes me angry. I just get frustrated, and I see what's happening. And I was watching one of the news programs the other day, and they had Juan Williams on as one of the pundits, and he was saying, you know what, let's worry about the real problems. That Marine is kind of a secondary problem. And it really hit me. And nobody else noticed it or said anything, but it really hit me. It's like, how can you call that a secondary problem? A foreign government has detained one of our soldiers, and we're leaving him behind. We're just crapping on what he's done and what he's done for his country. I mean, he was here serving, and he came back to California to get PTSD treatment, and it's unbelievable that they've left him behind. I keep waiting for, a news flash. Ex-Navy SEALs, go in, attack, prison convoy and rescue Marine. I mean, I just keep waiting for the citizens to rise up and do it. I just keep thinking it's going to happen.
Well, I know those guys, the motorcycle guys that were down in Florida and rode over. There were a lot of rumors pertaining to them going in and just grabbing him and leaving. The problem that they had, though, is if they do that, he becomes, a wanted person, and they did not want to do that. They want him to be able to walk out of there free and clear and be able to lead a normal life, as opposed to, somebody with a bounty on their head at that point.
Yeah, the thing is, he could walk out of there tomorrow if the guy that's out on the golf course would actually pick up the phone and come back to the office and get some work done and actually take care of it. I mean, he could be out tomorrow.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, he has done absolutely nothing to secure the release of our Marine. It just makes me angry.
Yeah, no, I would agree. A lot of us, I think, would agree with that. But you bring up the fact, too, this Ebola that's hit the news here recently with the 2 doctors that were brought to Atlanta. What are your feelings on bringing them home? Because, just like the Marine, they are United States citizens. The only difference is they have a very deadly disease. So what are your thoughts on bringing them back here and treating them as opposed to doing something somewhere else?
Yeah, you can't tell me the experimental drug that they're treating them with could not have been shipped and transported. I mean, they flew them here. They could have flown the experimental treatment there as well. I don't agree with bringing them back onto United States soil. I mean, these people who are going, the one organization, the one doctor's from Samaritan's Purse, and, Franklin Graham. And you know what? Those people know what they're doing and what they're getting into, and they actually sign up knowing full well that they might not be coming home, but they sign up as an exercise and an honor to their faith and an honor to God, and that's why they go. They go and they volunteer. That's their mission, and they know that they might not come home. There's always that possibility. So I want to treat them. I want to do everything we can, but to put the entire United States population at risk is it's unbelievable to me. I can't fathom it.
Well, I know there are a lot of concerns when they brought them in. I think their plane stopped in Bangor, Maine before it even hit Atlanta, and then the lack of security around the motorcade that brought them to the hospital. I know there was a videotape that hit the internet of them unloading one of the doctors anyways, who was walking into the hospital. I mean, they had a hazmat suit on and all of that. But, many, many concerns with what's going on here. And now you drag in the tinfoil hatness of of Monsanto being involved, along with Bill Gates, and patenting the drug itself that's curing them, and now you've opened a whole nother realm of conspiracy theorists out there.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I still can't understand why we brought him in, but you know, there again. That's one of those moments where the light bulb goes off, and I get that oh my gosh, that OMG moment where, you know, you can't tell me that, you know, there's not jihadists out there who wouldn't gladly 20, 30, 40, 50 of them wouldn't gladly go to where these, you know, this outbreak is in Africa, and you can't tell me they wouldn't absolutely on purpose infect themselves, and you can't tell me they wouldn't try and make it into the United States.
You mean through our southern border, possibly?
Well, through our southern border, possibly. I mean, that's what I deal with in Collective Retribution. They come across the southern border, and the drug cartels actually help them across in exchange for some AK-47s and some ammunition. But you can't tell me they wouldn't gladly sacrifice themselves for the cause of Allah and infect themselves and come and infect everybody. I mean, it wouldn't take much to go to an airport and, you know, contract Ebola, go to an airport, spit on your hands, touch door handles, you know, touch money, touch your ID that you're handing to the TSA agent. Now he's infected, and then he touches everyone else's ID. I mean, it's just crazy how fast it could spread, and you can't tell me that they would not gladly do that. I mean, they're willing to, you know, kill their children, their women, all for the sake of, you know, killing the infidel. So you can't tell me they wouldn't do that. There's just you can't tell me. I won't believe you.
Yeah. Well, what's your opinion on them already having everything they need here to bring us to our knees to begin with?
You know, it's possible. I mean, like I said, the border's been wide open for years, and if we don't, you know, secure that border, it's not if the scenario that plays out in Collective Retribution happens, it's when. If we don't secure that southern border, it's going to happen. And they could already have, you know, nuclear weapons in the United States. You can't tell me Kim Jong-un would not gladly give jihadists nuclear weapons. You can't tell me he wouldn't do it. He's the craziest nuclear holder in the entire world. You can't tell me he wouldn't do it. And for that matter, I could even see one day Putin possibly doing it if everything was in place and he had his infrastructure in place to actually come in once we collapsed and actually, you know, come in to possess, to take over our natural resources. So there's so many people out there that hate us. And, you know, we had our recent president go out and tell everybody how much he loved them and bowed down to every Muslim leader in the world. And, oh, they're going to like us. Oh, we're going to live in a utopia. I'm sorry, but he's made it so much worse. So you can't tell me there's not people out there that want to see us completely destroyed.
Well, you bring up a good point. We see all of these terrorist attacks all across the world, except for here. I mean, we've had a few, but not to the extent that other countries are seeing it.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts there? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of our government and our military? Do you think...
No, it's what Yamamoto said in World War II. You know, we can't invade the United States. Admiral, I think it was Yamamoto, said we can't invade the United States. If we do, there's a gun behind every blade of grass. So I mean, there's that fear. But the terrorists, they don't have that fear. They don't care if there's a gun behind every blade of grass. They just want to cause as much death and mayhem and panic and fear, and you know that's how they operate. So they don't care. But the other countries, I mean, we've never been invaded because we have the Second Amendment. Because we have so many armed citizens.
Yeah, I would agree with that on the jihadist part. I don't think it's going to matter how many of us own firearms or have a Second Amendment attitude. I think that I don't think it's time. There's a plan here in place that we're not privy to, that they're just waiting for.
Yeah, I think, it's not time, but I think it's coming. I really do. If we don't start fixing some of these issues, it's going to happen.
So, if you were president of the United States, we'll get started early on playing Conflicted. So, if you were president of the United States right now, two questions. Where would you put the Capitol? Would you move it out of Washington, D.C.? And two, how would you go about fixing the issues that we have right now?
Oh my gosh, I would not want to be the president coming up. I mean,
somebody has to do it.
Oh my gosh, what he's going to have to deal with, he or she, God please, no, not she. Anyway.
Whoa, back that bus up.
Well, there's only one she that I can think of that's even got a snowball's chance right now, or has even, got their hat in the ring. So that's why I say that. No, not she. I'm not saying there couldn't be a good one, but the one that's out there now, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I
don't know what we can do. I really don't. I mean, the first thing I would do, we have to secure that southern border. I mean, we should have the guard over every inch of that border, and, we should have snipers. I mean, we should really be securing that border, and that first coyote that gets on his jet ski and comes across that river, as soon as he gets halfway, boom, that's it. I mean, we've got to secure that border. We've got to send a message that if you want to come here, we welcome you. This country was built on immigrants, but you better do it the right way. Yeah.
Yeah, and my family, parts of it anyways, because I'm such a Heinz 57, we have the paperwork where they came through Ellis Island, but they did it legitimately, the correct way. And then they came to this country, and instead of trying to change it, they assimilated into it, became a productive part of society, as opposed to what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I talked to a lady at the book signing the other day, the same place that guy, threw my book down, and she said the same thing. She's like, my family immigrated here, and they came through Ellis Island, and she said, I remember my great-grandmother telling me stories when I was just a little girl, how, she would work during the day, and the husband worked, and at night she would take classes to learn English, and, she learned the language, and she assimilated. I mean, she followed the culture because they wanted to be Americans. They didn't want to be the country that they left. They didn't want to come here and fly their flag on U.S. soil. They wanted to come here and proudly fly the American flag and proudly call themselves, members of society, and proudly have that satisfaction that they went through all the hoops and they did everything that was required of them, and they made it. They became a United States citizen. So that's the difference. With a lot of what's happening on the southern border, that's the difference between illegal immigration and immigration. They want to be Americans when they do it the right way, and the other way, they really don't care whether they're Americans. They just want to come where their families are cared for, and that's the biggest difference.
Well, what happened? What the mentality part of it? How did we get from having pride in ourselves and wanting to make a difference and make it better and become an American versus we need to take over America and just bleed it dry? What do you think?
Oh, good golly. Well, I mean, it started with, it's so many places. I mean, it started even before the 60s, but in the 60s we had the mentality that, America's a mean country, we're this, we're that, and that mentality's carried through, and now it's in the White House. It's all the way at our top leadership. I mean, when your leadership doesn't take pride in your country, in your own country, and when your leadership, thinks of your country as a great evil in the world, it's going to trickle down to the population. There's no, it's mathematically impossible for that not to happen. So, I mean, when you've got, people like Bill Ayers who, Weather Underground, who murdered and performed domestic terrorism back in the 60s, and, you've got him friendly with the guy who's in charge right now. I mean, it's going to trickle down.
Yeah, unfortunately. So a lot of us have seen this. There's a rumble going on across the land for impeachment of our sitting president.
Oh,
why hasn't that happened? I mean,
part of it is, I don't know if we can. I honestly don't know if we can impeach and expect to get where we need to go. I don't know if the country is ready for that. I don't know if the population is ready for that. If we can control Congress, in November, then, we're going to tie the hands anyway. But as soon as they start impeaching, I don't think the country's ready for it. I don't think people are ready to go through that. I don't know. I know the world's ready. Those who hate us are ready, because that'll just bring more chaos in, and that'll just be a greater opportunity to strike. So I don't think we're ready, but we have to stop. We have to stem the flow of what he's doing, and hopefully be able to, put somebody in there who loves his country. Put somebody in there like a JFK, who coincidentally would be way too conservative for the Democrat Party now. Somebody who, you know, would tell you to ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. We need a Reagan conservative in there, and if we get that, I think there's a possibility to turn things around, but it's still a remote possibility no matter who we get in there.
Do you think we're too far gone at this point?
I think with the dollar, like I said, the dollar is right at the top of the bubble, and you can't monetize a nation's debt. You can't print money with no value to get yourself out of debt. It just does not happen. That'd be like me, you know, manufacturing my own credit cards in here that are worthless. Yeah. I mean, you can't do it. You can't monetize the debt, and that's exactly what we've done.
So since writing the book and everything that you've put into it, and every author I know does a ton of research as they're writing their book pertaining to the topics they discuss in there. How has it changed your life?
You know, it hasn't changed it much. I've always been very passionate about it. I've always paid attention to what's going on. Even when I was a little kid, it's funny, most kids had posters of, you know, well, in my generation, you know, posters of Farrah Fawcett on their wall. You know, I'm an 80s child, you know, young kid in the 70s, you know, 8 years old in the 70s. Most kids had that, or, you know, athletes on their wall. I had the preamble on my wall. I had a flag on my wall. I had pictures of the Founding Fathers, and I don't know where I got it. It was just in my DNA. So, you know, I don't know. It hasn't changed me a whole lot. It's just made me more aware of being prepared, more aware of making sure that I've got, you know, a way to get water out of my well. And I live in a pretty awesome place. I mean, I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm out a ways. I'm not close to town. My closest neighbors, you know, like a long ways away. You can see their house, but it's way out there. We've got water, you know, we've got chickens, we've got a huge garden. My wife, bless her heart, is just really good at canning and preserving, and, you know, smokehouse to smoke venison. And, you know, so I mean, we're in a pretty good position where we're at. But it definitely made me think since writing the book. And I didn't do a whole lot of research. I mean, you know, it's stuff that I knew. It's stuff that was already in my DNA or already in my mind that I had learned. And that's the other thing. If we don't start teaching our children history, and if they don't start learning where we came from and who we are, then, you know, we're destined to repeat the bad things that have happened. And right now, oh gosh, you watch those man on the street interviews, and it just astounds me that people know nothing about their founding. They know nothing about the founding fathers.
They don't teach that in school anymore.
They don't.
You know, luckily we've pulled our youngest child out of the public school system, but with the stuff that's taught there now, I don't see how we're going to fix the upcoming generations.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, the only thing we can do, and we've let it happen. I mean, I always say this, you know, in the church and in the secular world, we've let it happen. Those of us who know haven't spoken out. Those of us who understand haven't been vocal in the marketplace. I mean, we've got to speak out. If you can change one person's mind, maybe that one person will be the catalyst to turn everything around. So that's how I look at it. One book at a time, you know, one person at a time. You know, in the church, where I'm very, you know, devout in, we've let it happen. I mean, we haven't been speaking truth from the pulpits. I mean, good golly, the revolution happened in the church first. That's where we got our country, is from the pulpit. I mean, that's where it happened. So we've got to start speaking out. We can't be afraid of the 501c3 rules. I mean, we've got to start speaking out.
Well, when we have
one person at a time.
Yeah, when we have people like Joel Osteen and Rick Warren out there, though, that are heading up the church.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, that's a whole nother show right there alone. But well, first of all, where, if people want to buy the book, how would they go about contacting you?
They can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get it on your Kindle. You can get it on your, you know, Nookbook, your Sony Reader. You can get it on iTunes, Books A Million. You can get it online anywhere. They can go and visit my website, collectiveretribution.com, and they can, you know, log in and opt in on the website. And what I'm doing with the website is all of the people who opt in and give me their email address, they are going to get a advanced chance to buy the book 2 in the series once it's finished before anybody else. So,
awesome.
If they want to go to the website, they can do that. You can follow me on Twitter at DS Edwards Author. You can find it on Facebook, Collective Retribution. So it's it's out there, and if you buy it, share it. I'm not one of those guys that says buy it, but don't share it so somebody else has to buy it. No, just share it. I mean, the more people that read it, possibly, like I said, one person at a time, one read at a time. Maybe that one person is the one who can be the catalyst for change. That one person can turn things around. So, yeah, get the book, read it. It'll make you mad, but it gives you hope in the end. So
I was going to say, it will bring tears to your eyes in the end. I can attest to that.
Well, that's good. I made you cry. I'm so mean. I make girls cry.
Well, I wasn't bawling my eyes out or anything like that. But, it hit a soft spot.
Well, we have a mutual friend, and I don't know if I should say his name on the air, but we have a mutual friend, and he actually was telling me when he read it, he was on a plane with his wife, and they were traveling somewhere, flying commercial. He's a pilot, too, and he's flying commercial. And he said he finished the book on the plane, and he had his head turned towards the window, and his wife says, "Are you crying?" And he says, "I was kind of embarrassed because I've never, ever cried in front of my wife." And he's like, yeah. So I made him cry, so it made me feel good.
Yeah, it'll choke you up. So when is book 2 coming out? You gotta have a timeline?
I'm shooting for 12 months, but in the literary world, deadlines mean nothing. So, I'm shooting for 12 months, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and good Lord, you add technology into that.
Absolutely.
It's got a dangerous combination.
Yeah, the first book deals with, more of the rural America, and book 2 is actually going to be same time frame, and it's going to deal with urban America, what's happening in urban America. And, I can tell you right now there's going to be a racial component to book 2. So, I can kind of see some race riots and race wars actually happening if everything collapses. So, yeah, just a teaser.
I'm typing at the same time. My brain is not going to function. So, back to the initial question. Where would you move the capital if you could?
Oh my gosh!
Any certain spot that you're that you like better than others, or do you want to just leave it where it's at?
I think it's fine where it's at. I mean,
so that way when they blow it up, that it's stuck on the East Coast.
I mean, you could move it to Colorado, but then all the politicians would be more stoned than they already are. So I don't know if that's a good spot to move them. So I don't know where to move it. I mean, I think it's okay.
No, wait a minute. That means the politicians actually abide by the law. You're inferring. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be...
I'm not saying they're not stoned now, but I'm saying at the fingertips they'd be even more stoned and we'd be even more trouble, so I don't know.
Gotcha. And words of advice for anybody new into preparedness and getting ready for what's coming up. What are your thoughts there?
Just do something. It can become so overwhelming when you're thinking about prepping. You're thinking about, oh my gosh, all this stuff I have to do. I have to be prepared for this and this scenario, and I have to have this set aside, and I have to have food stores, and I have to have water, and I have to have this, and I have to have my go bag with my first aid kit and my survival stuff. Don't be overwhelmed. Just do something. Just start. Start with water. Start with extra water. Start with some extra food stores. Start with some dry goods. Just do something. Get started. Don't sit there and say, well, there's time, because I don't know if there is time. So you've got to do something. If you're even concerned in the least, you need to start preparing. And like I said, just baby steps. Do something. Don't let it overwhelm you.
Well, you talk about people think there's time, and I think just alone with what went on in Toledo, Ohio this past week, you go to work and think everything is great, and during the day they put a ban on the water because it's toxic. So now what are you going to do? I mean, just like that. And, it's not like there are going to be big warning signs, hey, we've got a train coming right at us, get ready. You can put it all together and see it. For those that have their eyes open, they get it. But the majority of the people, how many people out there in the United States do you feel are actually get it and are trying to get prepared? Not what level they are.
not enough. I mean, there's definitely not enough. I mean, most people, I know people in some of the larger cities, and they have no food in their store for in their house for everyday life. They have nothing in their home. If they want a meal, they either go out to eat or they go to the store and they buy a steak and they buy a vegetable and they go home and they cook it and they have nothing in their fridge. They don't even have milk in their fridge. I mean, I know people who that's their entire world, that 5-block radius where they have influence in their lives, and they go to Starbucks in the morning, they have their electronic devices, they have their technology, and that's their entire world. The world outside of that does not exist to them. So I would say the number is more mainstream than it used to be, but it's still really low. Did you ever see that article in the New York Times? Not that, we all read the fish wrapper that, is such a crappy paper, but if you saw that article, it was called The Prepper Next Door. Did you see that article?
I might have.
It was basically saying that, the prepper movement used to be associated with the militias, the white supremacists,
Oh no, I didn't read that one.
the nut jobs, that's how people used to think of preppers, the LDS church. I mean, they thought of them as kind of crazy. But the article, what it was saying is now it's policemen, it's doormen, it's a school teacher. It's become more mainstream, and they called the article The Prepper Next Door. So, I mean, it's kind of starting to become more mainstream. And, National Geographic does not represent preppers. I mean, Doomsday Preppers is the stupidest show I've ever seen in my life. But, it is becoming more mainstream.
I'm going to say this, and everybody that knows me knows my thoughts on Doomsday Preppers. But we can't deny the fact that no matter how asinine we think that it is, that it hasn't opened up the eyes of some people out there and actually got them to start thinking. So,
that's true. I'll backpedal. Let me walk it back. Let me be a Democrat for a second. Let me walk back my statement. What if I had a press secretary? I would say, well, he misspoke. What he meant to say was actually, that's my whole goal, is to make a difference with one person. So if it made a difference with 1 or 2 or 3 people, then yeah, it was worth it. But the scenarios that they play out are, silly, in my opinion. But
yeah, they are. And I was, I didn't watch it last week, but from what I heard, you had to have a lot of money to play in the prepper game last week again. So it's not realistic. Because, but the week before that we did watch, and we were watching and commentating on it online on our Pink page. And, within minutes of these people being online, I could tell you exactly where they lived. And then they gave me all the information of where their preps are stored and how to get into their house and everything else.
Oh.
Now more than ever, OPSEC has to come into play. And more as the days go by. Please, if you're listening out there, just, it's not open season for preppers, trust me. And it's not just those people that don't believe in what we do and are going to panic afterwards, the zombies. There are people within our own community, our community of preparedness, that are just fishing for information to take things from us. So
yeah, I've talked to people. It's scary. I talked to an ex-military guy at a book signing. I guess it's been about a month ago, and he was asking about prepping and everything. And what he told me, he says, I have some friends that run in my circle. And he said, we're not planning on prepping. We're not storing anything. And I said, well, what are you going to do? Oh, we're just going to go kill people and take what they've got.
Yeah, well,
and it blew me away. I was like, are you kidding me? This guy just told me this. It's amazing.
Well, was it last season or the season before? We had that Marauder prepper that was on the TV show that said the same thing. I'll just take it from the people that are prepared. He ended up in jail because he's a dumbass, but that's a whole other story.
Wow. Yeah, that's scary stuff. I even got in trouble. I mean, I had a friend that I've known forever was over for dinner, and I was like, oh, you got to see what I just got, and I pulled out this new thing that I got, and, anyway, after they went home, to make a long story short, I tend to ramble. My wife says, you know what? That was really dumb. I said, what do you mean? I've known him my whole life. Yeah, but you don't do that. So I start thinking about it. Thank God for my wife. She keeps me grounded. So, you don't want to tell people what you have. You don't want to brag about what you have. You just want to put it away and have it in case you need it.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I was talking to somebody about this last week. We've talked about, in the past, about forming community. And, do you move close to each other? I know there's the Citadel that's up in Idaho. I think it was Idaho. That's a community of like-minded people that, they live behind their closed walls and, and whatnot. So I know there's a lot of people in the preparedness community that, if we could just buy some land and we'd all move in together kind of mentality, versus being spread out, having, smaller clusters, if you want to call it that, spread out through the United States. What are your thoughts? Should we form these big communities, or do you think it's better to stay small and quiet?
Well, it depends on, it depends on who makes up the community. I mean, obviously trusted relatives and friends would be better than somebody you don't know. And there is strength in numbers, but it all depends on, what you're prepping for and what you're surviving at the time. I mean, I've told you this before. I don't see, the scenario that a lot of people play out that, you're going to live comfortably for 10 years and live off the land, and the whole world civilization's not going to come back roaring back with a vengeance. I don't think it's that long. I think preps are more short term, in my opinion. I think the main thing you'd be battling would be a government machine that would be bent on controlling the population. I don't think it's one of those scenarios where the grid goes down and, 10 years later, Billy is still living out in the woods in a wall tent, living off the land. I just don't see that being a scenario. I see things coming back quicker, and I see conflict happening quicker than that. But I also see, I've got a friend who's a Navy SEAL, and he told me something, and it really stuck with me. He said his prep is he's got enough for him and his wife to live on for 6 months, and he's got an underground place to go that's hidden, and it's close to his house, but it's hidden. You don't know that it's there. And he told me one time, he said, my plan is to go underground and live as long as I have to, maybe not come out for a month or 60 days. And he said, in that time, everybody who's going to kill everybody is already going to have it done. They're going to kill each other off, and then I'm going to come out and hopefully be there to rebuild. And it actually made a lot of sense with me. It stuck with me because the mass chaos that would ensue, especially in the inner cities, would be off the charts. I mean, people would be killing each other for the last loaf of bread in a place like Portland, Oregon, or New York City. It wouldn't take long, and there'd be, putrefied mounds of rotting flesh all over the ground. I mean, people would kill each other off.
Yeah, I think a lot of us agree with that. It's kind of like the layers of an onion that you have to be ready for. You got the druggies and, all of that are going to freak out and kill each other first. The elderly and small children that don't have a family unit around them are in that layer. You start the farther out on the onion that you can get with the layers, or the middle, towards the middle, whichever way you're going to peel it first, I guess so, towards the middle. You can't. Never mind. Anyways, my mind just went down. It's way too early. But yeah, I mean, we all agree. The longer you can stay quiet, be the gray man, blend in, and not cause a commotion, the better chances you are of surviving. But let me ask you this: with that mentality, though, who's going to step up and save the world if we all take that mentality?
Well, like I said, you're not in there forever, and my thoughts are, when you do emerge from the middle of that onion, I love Walla Walla sweets, by the way, eat them like an apple, but when you emerge from the middle of that onion, then hopefully there will be enough sense of order starting to return to where you could be one of the people that make, that is that catalyst for change, that is that catalyst for repair. So I have hope. I have faith in man and humanity. I mean, we're not, stupid. We're smart people. We obviously channel it in really bad ways sometimes, but I still have hope. I still have faith in people that, there's still enough people out there that get it. And I run into them all the time through collective retribution. When I go to a book signing, it amazes me how many people really get it. I'm not saying I'm smarter than those who don't get it, but there's people that come up and they understand where we're at. They understand the political climate. They understand what got us to where we're at now. and they have a real love and honor for their country. So I have hope that there's enough of us out there that, we could actually rebuild and we could actually make it better. So I don't know.
You think there's enough out there that can do that? Do you think?
I think there is. I really do. I mean, regardless of what you see in the media, I think there's more people out there of a like mind than what we realize.
Do you think that there are going to be some last-minute train hoppers when it goes down that are going to be hanging on to the sides of the locomotion as it goes through and takes the U.S. down?
Oh, absolutely. There'll be those out there who will never, you'll never change their philosophy. There'll be there's a guy in my book, and he's somebody who has that philosophy that, the government is the end all to be all, and it's a wonderful thing that this thing happens in my book. This scenario happens because there's no more dangerous weapons in every home, and we've got a real chance to make that utopian society. And, he goes and tries to turn in the resistance to the enemy. I mean, he, rides his bicycle all the way to where the enemy is and tries to turn them in. So I can see people like that will latch on to whoever's in power and, fawn all over them and try and be a part of that. But, people made their choice. People right now, there's a line, and people have decided which side of that line they want to be on. And I think there's more people on the line on the side of righteousness and the side of traditional America than what's on the other side. It's just the other side is so much more vocal than what we've been, and that's our own fault.
Yeah, and sadly, some of those on the other side of the line are family members, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I have them in mind, too.
Yeah. So down to the last couple minutes here, because I'm going to screw the end of this one up, too, and it always comes back and bites me. So before the end music starts, how can people get a hold of your book? Where do they track you down at, and what's going on in your future?
Okay, Collective Retribution, D.S. Edwards. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get it on iTunes, Books A Million. You can get it on your Kindle. You can get a hardcover. You can get a paperback. You can follow me on Twitter at D.S. Edwards Author, and you can find it on Facebook at Collective Retribution. Get it and share it. Share it with people. And do me a favor, if you buy it online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, go back and leave me a review after you're done. I read every single review. I'll sit up at night and just power through them. I mean, I'd love to read the reviews because, I just want people to like it. I mean, I just want to be liked.
Yeah, and it's a very real scenario. It's not, you're not in that pool of doomsday kind of zombie blood-sucking people kind of books. This is a very, very real scenario, especially what's playing out in the news right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy.
Thank you. Yes. Awesome. Have a great day.
Thank you.